Good evening, buonasera, from Clearwater, Florida. I'm tuning in from my home. Tonight it's Motivational Monday Journal Hookum, where I just read you an entry from one of my journals. I have a few that I'm just going to kind of randomly just flip through and see what we got. And as you know, I got my booch going on. Good evening, everyone. So many beautiful rock and rad stars out there introducing themselves, coming out and just expressing themselves and being in their authenticity, showing up, you being you, ridiculously and authentic, right? It's the whole purpose of this group. This is the beauty. This is the vision that Tom and I had, was to create a space, a sacred space, where you feel safe and you feel at home. You may not have a community where you live, but you have a family right here. And you know, this web of inclusion, it's embracing. It's bringing us all together, right? Hey, Heather, how are you? So it's bringing us together, and for some of us IT professionals, you know, the past life thing going on here, I understand that, you know, it can be harnessed from manipulation and trying to put people in fear. Hey, Stella. Or it can be harnessed for the greater good of all and bringing people together, which is the whole purpose. Tom and myself, we saw it. We said, you know, we want to bring people together. We want to create a space where everybody feels authentic and just real, you know, being rad, being raw, being authentic, authentically raw, ridiculous, rad. You know, it's embracing who you are. Mind, body, and soul, integrating all the parts to make you whole, right? This is the blessing, right? So I just realized something, and you know, this happens every once in a while. There we go. My apologies. I knew something felt a little funny just looking at myself. Right? It happens, you know. Tonight we're drinking, I just made a melange again. I put together my kombucha with a little plum applesauce and just plain kombucha and a couple drops of some vanilla. A little vanilla stevia to sweeten things up. That is so good. Years ago, when I was living in Italy and I had access to trees, you know, lemon trees and orange trees and the mandarin orange trees, right? So I would make an applesauce, and I used to like to use, it's really hard here in the U.S. because everything's coated in some sort of, preservative or wax or pesticide or something. So, and the unfortunate thing is, unless you have access to your own citrus trees, you're exposing yourself to who knows what. And on top of that, you may even be exposing yourself to who knows the process and how the food arrived to you, right? So I actually have a Meyer lemon tree that this year it produced a lot of fruits, and I'm really excited because they're sweet. They're nice and juicy sweet. This is the first year that they've produced, and there's at least a good 15 Meyer lemons on it. But when I was in Italy, I made these apple sauces that I have not been able to recreate here in the U.S. I would use apples, and I would use a little bit of coconut oil, and I would put in the peel, the rind, not all of it, but the yellow part, the actual rind of it, into my apple sauces, and it would get this creaminess, right? And then when I would make an applesauce, I actually made one of the best applesauce, apple creamy. It was like having this apple champagne because it was fizzy. There was a little bit of the coconut oil, and yeah, it would float on the top of it because it was cold, and that's what happens with coconut oil. But it was like it melted in your mouth. And unfortunately, because I don't have that same dynamic, you know, The water's different, the air's different. When you change countries, when you change areas of living, everything changes. There's different vibration, there's different energy that you're exposed to, right? Haven't any of you experienced that in your life? You know, you move from one place to another and you're like, well, the water's harder or the water's softer, or maybe, you know, it irritates your skin. You don't know what they're putting in the water, because that's one of the things we don't know. We don't know what we're being exposed to. What we don't know, right? But when we do know, we can do better. So here's the first thing I'm going to just put out there. If you find value in this group, you find value in these videos, you want to spread the love, sprinkle a little love on the share button. Remember to add friends, because you know sharing is caring. I'm here to share myself. You know, I'm showing up as I am. I have a lot of my own issues, you know. I'm human. I have stories. I'm sure that many of you have many similar stories. And so we grow through being open and just taking in what's around us. And so tonight, whatever I may reflect upon may resonate with you. And if it resonates with you, there may be somebody you know who could also use a little bit of inspiration. So this is why I say, don't be afraid. Don't be scared. Share alike. Because you never know whose life you're going to touch with just the touch of a finger to the button on the screen. Technology is amazing. And you can't take any of this stuff personal, right? Because we're exposed to so much these days. The unfortunate thing is people make things personal. Because we've been told that our opinion matters. And sometimes our opinion is irrelevant, right? So you know what opinions are like, right? Because everybody's got one. Just saying. If it isn't kind, sometimes it's better to leave it alone. Choose happiness over being right. Right? So, and always check yourself at the door. Take responsibility for the energy you bring into the space. Come in with an open heart and an open hand to embrace. I'm gonna be waxing poetic all night, okay? And grab yourself some kombucha. Find a nice comfortable spot. And let's wrap. So, bottoms up. I have to admit, I was a little bit delayed because I was feeling my own trepidation. So something's coming up tonight, and I really don't know what it is. I had a beautiful day. My dad sold his boat. We brought it to the dealer to hand off to the new owner, who is a lovely man from Greece, and hopefully we'll go out on the boat with him, which is kind of cool. Very rad, because now my dad doesn't have to deal with all the maintenance and all that. So, again, this is your playground. I love each and every one of you. Thank you so much for showing up. Thank you for those of you who have gone live on the group. You're really exciting me, because I'm like going, oh. It's really lighting up my day. It makes my days even brighter, just seeing you all. And I wake up in the morning, and yeah, I have my morning practice, and that to me is how I tithe my time, because what I learned in my Kundalini Yoga teacher training is that when you tithe part of your time of the day, it's like what they say is you protect yourself, you're covered for the rest of the day. When you do that dedication, that devotion to yourself, to your highest wisdom, to the divine, whatever bigger source there is than, you know, we really are a part of. We can't say that we're doing it for anybody separate from ourselves, because when you show up for you, you show up for everyone else around you, right? Again, that's the energy you bring into a space. And if your intention is already set that I will do my practice, I will clear out the garbage pit of the mind, so that when I open my heart and speak from my navel, it is pure intentions of goodwill and upliftment for others as well as myself. And I show up as I am internally. So when you clear out the garbage pit of the mind, you're actually allowing your heart to be open and get that, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me. Fa la 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 la. The rainbow connection, the bridge from the heart to the head, is that much closer. And that's what most of us have to work on. We have to work on bridging the gap, right? Because most of us are disconnected. Again, we're going to breathe. breathe that prana back into you, that life force, that sustainer, maintainer, right? And I'm going to tell you, you've got the force within you. You've always had it, Luke. Right? The life force is within you. It never went away. Only thinking made it so, right? And so I'm having a little bit of technical issues here. Maybe I'll just sit back. Whew. It's actually kind of warm. We had a beautiful sunny hot day here in the beautiful sunshine state of Florida. And so, oh, Rachel, honey, mwah, I'm hoping they're tears of joy. Because ultimately, you know, whenever we have the tears bubbling up, that means that something is clearing, cleansing out of us. And so personally, I absolutely adore love, and I love to cry. It's even better if you can be out in the sun, in the rain, you know, with the sunshine too. It is awesome. This is one thing I always loved about living in Florida, is we would have rain in the afternoon, but the sun would be shining, right? So let me see if this works. I'm having bright lights, big city. So, yeah, it's very humbling to hear all of your stories, to read all of your introductions to the group, because I can see so much of myself in each and every one of you, and I want you to know that my heart goes out to each and every one of you, whether you're struggling with something or you're in the best place of your life, and you're here to also be part of that upliftment and support for others, right? Because when you show up for you, you show up for me. When I rise, you rise. When you rise, I rise. It's this synchronicity, right? And so here I am showing up for you and sharing a bit of me. And let's see where this leads. So, okay, so I just randomly opened my phone to one of my journal entries here, and then I'll move on to some other. I got a stack going on over here, right? So, hi, Wenda and Ella, how are you, ladies? And so here's an entry from over 2 years ago. Let me see where I was on this one. This is from October of 2015. So I dreamed I was in Europe somewhere, riding a bicycle around the city. It seemed like Naples because I rode by my girlfriend Stefania, who was in a rush, but I said I hoped we would catch up. I was there with girlfriends. We were at a show around the ruins. I also rode a motorino with my purse hidden in my left side under my leg. Very aware when there appeared some strange characters who saw it and were thieves. Oddly, I was also holding on to plug ends of an electrical cord that might have been part of the motorino. Imagine this. I don't know. Sometimes my dreams are pretty wacky, but significant because there's always a little connection. And then I was in a salon trying on some beautiful jewelry when I met this man in scrubs. He complimented me and then offered a dress that was very beautiful and old vintage and went with the necklace. The colors were vibrant blues, and I think I had some in my hair. Alas, I saw some invitation for his wedding because he was getting married, despite there being an obvious connection and pull between us. I had to return to my group and got a bit lost in some ruins where I felt I was being followed. And that's where that dream apparently left off. I don't even remember that dream. It's amazing some of the dreams that I've had over the years that I can look back and go, what was that all about? Do y'all ever feel that way? Ever experienced that? Oh, thank you, Ella. Thank you very much. So I had my morning practice. And I set my intention in this particular practice, right? Okay, so this intention was I release the mental anguish from the manifestation in my physical body, mind, and soul. I felt my body release the pains I'd awoken with. I feel the love and support of my divine bathing me and embracing me fully. I see how my life is unfolding perfectly and how there are moments that the momentum ebbs and flows. Everything is unfolding perfectly. I am fully supported in realizing my dreams and visions. My soul is the one who wants to have these experiences, which is why I'm even aware and drawn to making them happen. Every experience is simply our soul's desire to serve our source and experiencing these moments across all of humanity. We are all part of the divine's collective experience. And if you watched I think it was last Monday's Journal Hookum a week ago, when I expressed that that is one of my personal views on how I feel we are all living individual expressions of the divine, that we're all connected to this one source because there is no separation, right? And that with this connection, we came here with an agreement of our souls that we would live out this experience. That our own divine is having this amazing, can you imagine being the one at the very top, being able to see down through the echelons all of these different various experiences through you, through me, through him and her and the animals and the trees, and being able to have that collective experience, which we do actually have. We just tend to overlook it, overshadow. Like when, on a mass scale, when you look at our country or you look at other countries, collectively as a human race, everything's a reflection of what's going on internally in each and every one of us. And collectively, when you look out, that's an overall of what we're all experiencing as a whole, right? It's phenomenal. And I've just always felt that, I've always actually felt that similarly that we're like mice in a maze, right? And in this maze, we're trying to find our way back to ourselves, ultimately. So let's go back here. Where did it go? For a moment, I just lost it. Where did it go? Nope, that's not it. I just lost the page. I turned my phone and it went elsewhere. Okay, so continuing on with that thread. Where did it go? Okay. I said it was October of 2015. I'm always fascinated. Where did it go? Okay, hello. I think I lost my place. All right, here I am. So, I left off at, I had this sensation we're all part of it, the divine's collective experience. Our body is simply the temple that houses our soul, which serves the greater source of all that is. We are serving our soul through this temple we call our physical body. Even more profound is how the microcosms make up the macrocosm, but how it's infinite inside of us as well as outside of us. There are smaller yet infinite parts of our physical body that serve graduating within. Now, how cool is that? The idea that, yes, infinitely we can think in terms of, I love you too, Lucy. Infinitely we can look outside of ourselves and it just looks so much, because when we think in terms of infinity, we think in terms of grandiose, going further beyond us, but we never think that it's just as infinite internally to us. Infinitesimally, tiny, 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 right? Infinitely, just as small, and it's microscopic, but we think in terms of bigger and smaller, and it really isn't. It just is a different perspective and where we are focused, right? Where attention goes, energy flows. And I think that that's just in itself, you hear about science and they're saying, oh, we found smaller, but we don't have the tools to see smaller than the smallest particles within ourselves as our physical body, right? For example, the doctors in science. But in reality, just because we can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, right? If a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? Well, only if you witness it. So they say. So, what are we really doing, creating all this turmoil and disruption? I believe even the divine source has planned this out like a play and will come back around to glorious grace and ease. Partly I see that instead of serving our egos, see that instead of serving, our egos have gotten so out of control that we are unable to see the truth of what is happening and how beautiful this whole experience really is. How did we get so caught up in the polarities that we feel the need to label and categorize everything to the extreme? It's like we became so OCD that we can't do without this behavior. Simplicity. It just doesn't exist because our mind wants to make everything so complicated. It says, no, that's just too easy, because we've been told nothing comes easy, right? So we've been conditioned to believe that because we've never experienced the ease and grace of how life shall unfold for us when we allow it to, that we resist that which really is what is in the moment, being pure right here, right now, not going without, but just going within, sitting with what is, being present, and not getting caught up externally. And God, that's where our mind will end up going, is wherever we feel most comfortable. And most of us feel most comfortable in our little bubbles, our beliefs, our storylines, our behaviors, our patterns, our past. It's all perception. And we show up where we're at in any moment and where we've been. And it takes courage. It takes vulnerable courage to step outside of where you are now. Because the unknown, that's unknown. So it's fear that comes up. It arises and says, this doesn't feel comfortable because I don't know it. And you don't know what you don't know. So you can't fear something even that you don't know. It's just that the mind gets so caught up in the idea that, well, I don't know it, so if I don't know it, that must mean it's something that's not good. Like as if half the stuff we do know is any better, right? So, hashtag Motivational Monday. Do y'all journal? Have you ever been on a journaling retreat? That's something I've considered doing as well. So I'm going to pull up, let's see where I was last year about this time. So that was about 2 years ago. This is a little over 2 years ago. And I love when I get to read over some of my old stuff because it's great reflection. And it reminds me where I'm at in this moment and how far I've come and how I knew something and I've now maybe experienced a little bit more insight into it, or that it jives with what I need to reflect upon in this moment. It's always a great bringing it back to where I need to be in this moment. And I think this gets me even more excited now because I'm getting used to these little reflections, and this is only once a week. I mean, I've got oodles of journals and entries. Man, that was so good. So about a year ago, what is today? It's the 13th, right? Ooh, I don't have an entry for the 13th, but let me see. So I have one for the 14th of November. And I'm going to see if I have something good in here, so. Oh, I have a duplicate on here. Sometimes I've got articles in here as well. So this is actually kind of funny. I'm going to share what I was doing about this time last year. So last year I started doing a little microdosing, okay? And for those of you who don't know what microdosing is, I've been using the psilocybin mushrooms. And I personally, I'm not into any type of drugs or anything like that. I do believe that nature has ways of communicating with us. And for me, I really don't need all this stuff, but at the same time, I'm fascinated with trying new things and being open to the awareness of that connection that, mushrooms are fascinating. And here's why, because mushrooms are like our little network beneath the earth. If you've ever watched or listened to Paul Stamets, he's a mycologist, right? Which, for those of you who don't know what that is, He is a scientist of mushrooms, and that is his specialty. And he is phenomenal. He's got amazing insight. And in my learning, I've always wanted to try ayahuasca. There's so many different herbal, shamanistic things out there, and I've done some things in my life, but not a lot. I do believe in using the power of nature in its most natural state possible. I make a beautiful shroom, what I call shroom tea, and it's yummy. It's lemony and vanilla flavored, and I add a lot of superfoods and Ayurvedic herbal blends to it, so that it kind of enhances and it gives it a nice balancing out. Because you also have to remember that when you do things like this, and I would never recommend this to anybody without some form of oversight or somebody to be with you, and also to be aware of your own state. Because again, mindfulness and with intention as to why you would ever do something that is going to put you into a more heightened state of awareness. If you're not already there, I don't recommend this for other people out there. Because some people with high anxiety, for example, if you have high anxiety, this can bring on more anxiety. Depending on your belief systems, if you're afraid of what you're about to do, then don't do it. Fear will also bring out the shadow of what is underlying the fear. And so I started doing it about a year or so ago, and I just realized it just reading through this journal. And I really had some beautiful insights. I had an insight that really connected me to understanding some of the disconnect I was having with my father. And it was really sweet. It really was, because at the moment in my one particular meditation, I just had this, oh my gosh, I had this deep compassion that my father and I connected through food. I mean, he was the chef, he was the one with the restaurant, and my sisters, we especially my youngest sister and myself, we've always been very much foodies, and we've always connected with my dad through food. Let's go out to eat. Oh, this is really good. You got to try it. Like we really, really like food. But when you no longer eat the same types of food, all of a sudden it's like the fear comes up. And in my dad's case, what I felt came up was this awareness of disconnect. Like my dad no longer had a connection to me with food, and it was like, whoa, what do we have to connect with, right? So the compassion I found was, oh my gosh, he feels like he's lost me or feels abandoned because now we no longer have that connection. So now we have to find something more substantial, which is the interesting thing about human connection in itself. You really don't need something like a vice or food to bring you together with another person. Connection should just be, I really enjoy your company, and we don't even have to speak. Or I admire you for just what you do that maybe I don't do. I love your gifts, your radiance, your beauty, how you show up. I don't have to agree with you, and I don't have to have a dialogue that is, you trying to convince me or me trying to convince you. I can admire and love you just as you are, showing up as you. And so last year, I like that one. I just read something that I'm just going to read this piece, and this was from the 6th of last year, and then I'll go back to what I was discussing. Okay, we are creatures of habit. This was a titled blog. See the pattern, recognize your patterns. We are creatures of habit because it's comfortable to stay in the known, even if it's uncomfortable. This is how change starts. The only way change can occur is for you to initially recognize in yourself what it is that holds you back from change. So first you must be aware of a particular pattern that keeps you stuck in the same routine, habits, mundane, familiar. I feel you, Maria. I feel you. So we go to food because it feeds us what we need on an emotional level, again, that connection. I get that. I really do. I can use food as the best distraction. I spend most of my time in my kitchen because that's where my love is and my heart. That's the hearth. There's a reason they call it the hearth, because women, especially as householders, hold the house together by keeping the hearth, right? This is going back eons. Keeping the hearth aflame, keeping the fire burning. Never doubt your importance to keeping the family unit, right? As women, a lot of times we devalue ourselves because maybe we don't think we're important in the role that we play. Whether you're a home wife, a housekeeper in the sense of keeping the household. A householder is what Yogi Bhajan calls us. Women are the householders. We are able to multitask. And I say multitask in the fact that we are able to do many things at once. It is not just mentally, but we are able to do it psychologically. And scientifically, it's proven. And it's not insulting to say that men are wired differently and that they are single-minded focused, because that actually is the way that they are wired scientifically, and that has been proven. And that doesn't make it a bad thing. In fact, I think a lot of the connotation and things that have been spoken about men have only one-track minds. The reality is single-minded focus, again, is meditation. And so, ladies, those of you out there who try to give your partner a task and then you try to have a conversation with them, let them be and let them do what they need to do. Don't try to get them to understand where you're all over the place. It's, again, there's our roles. Embrace them. That's how we're wired. You have your gifts and they have theirs. When you recognize them and you communicate them, then you don't have any issues between you. It's easy to say, I just can't do that. But then are you showing up and making the effort to do or be aware? If you're aware of something, then you have that opportunity to make a change. Male or female, it doesn't really matter who you are. And sometimes, again, that's where the mindfulness comes into play. That's where the moment to moment being present is so key, again, and checking yourself at the door when you show up. What is my intention when I walk through the door? Am I coming from the heart or am I going to come from the head? Am I present in my physical body and am I breathing, right? Communication is key. And if you know yourself, it makes it easier for you to communicate yourself to another. If they don't know themselves, it's going to be a little bit more difficult, right? So let me continue. So then just observe how it comes in your life repeatedly, right? Okay, so I just said about becoming aware of a particular pattern that keeps you stuck in the same routine, habits, mundane, and familiarity. Just observe how it comes up in your life repeatedly, right? How many of you have had relationships and say, I just can't understand, he's crazy, she's crazy. I attract these weirdos. They're showing up because that's how you're showing up. That's the pattern. I used to joke and I'd say, when I break up with somebody, I'm like, oh, it's okay, honey. It's not you, it's me. But then my joke was, no, really, it's not me, it's you. I told you I was a little bit of a wise ass, a little sassy, and could be a little bit of a bitch. I really wasn't that bad. But, is it a reaction to an emotion? Is the pattern simply a routine that is not yielding you the joy in your life? Is it an addictive pattern? Meaning you don't know how to stop it because it's familiar and you just keep on doing it just because it's familiar, right? So now once you have identified the pattern, simply witness it without judging it and ask yourself, when did this begin? From what point did this pattern originate in my life? Sit with it. Keep asking yourself questions to challenge why it exists. Journal what comes up as a cathartic healing and release of old wounds. You'll build even more awareness as things you may have forgotten about also begin to surface for you. Ask yourself, how is this serving me, you, to yourself, right? How can I release this pattern for something more fulfilling? Because the only way you can allow something new in is to release whatever the old is. You have to make space. You know, that's a purging. That's the decluttering. That's the let go and let that ease and grace allow the beauty to come into your space, into your life. Embrace that. That's who you are at the core of you. You have to recognize that every pattern, habit, routine serves us in our life. But it's important to see when it's past its expiration date and efficacy in your life. See the pattern. One of the main things that people get upset at is they assume. You know what assuming does? Others should just know their boundaries and limitations, when in fact they don't even know for themselves. So when a person feels like someone is taking advantage of them, it's mostly because they're expecting the other person to recognize when enough is enough for them, or when they should stop imposing. That idea that people should just know doesn't serve anyone because it's uncommunicated. Never assume. You know what assuming does? It makes an ass out of you and me, right? So ultimately, that's what probably the biggest problem in our culture around. It doesn't even matter where you live. There's so much uncommunicated, lack of communication, conscious communication. Recognizing that we all come from different backgrounds. We're all raised differently. Nobody's exactly the same. And that for me to assume you have any idea what I went through, or I do assume that I think I know anything about you, that's imposing, that's a projection. And a lot of that is conditioned into us to believe that that's acceptable. I mean, really, does that sound right to anybody else? It's acceptable that someone should just know. You should just know that I need you to do this. Well, you never told me you did. It's two ways. Communication, it's more than one person, right? More than one individual. So the reality is that the individual just keeps on giving without recognizing for themselves when enough is enough. What is the underlying drive that causes them to keep going and giving? Simple. They want to be liked and accepted. When you overgive, what happens? You deplete yourself, especially if you're expecting something in return, because that's the root of all suffering. As that you give, expecting something in return. You either do it because you want to from your heart, or don't do it at all, because that's an attachment, and that's what causes suffering, is the idea that others should reciprocate in a way that you haven't even communicated. Those that claim they do it from their heart but still get upset, that they have an expectation of something in return. So it is not as genuine as they claim. True, genuine giving has no strings attached. We all want to connect with, feel loved, and be appreciated by others. The pattern to recognize and ask yourself is whether or not you are compromising yourself in order to feel validated, liked, or accepted by others. Do you give without expectation, or do you do it for something in return? Right? Don't let the mind trick you into thinking you do it if you still get upset by giving. Expectations are our own self-created saboteurs, causing us stress, pain, and suffering. Right? That's the mind. It's all up in here. If you can just wipe that out and just go, you know what? I want to do this because I want to do it. I feel the love in my heart, and that's what I'm expressing. If you've ever had any of my food, you've ever been in my presence when I give you my time, to me, that's something sacred. You know, I don't just do that. I've learned to discern my time is precious. And I prefer it to be to somebody who's receiving it with the same love that I'm giving it, and that they're open to it and they've asked for it, and that it's not me imposing, first off, that I'm not wasting my time and energy, that the other person is receiving value as much as I'm giving the value. Because we're all valuable. The question is whether or not we're just doing it and expecting, ooh, I need to get something, give, take, give, take, give, take. There's always the flow, but you got to remove this. This imposes a whole lot more than it needs to be imposed. So, here's the deal. We all have those friends that we claim, let us down. But just like the saying goes, the definition of crazy is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the same results, or expecting different results. So doing the same thing over and over again is the definition of crazy when you're expecting something different to happen, right? You haven't changed up your routine, so what makes you think that someone's going to do anything different, right? You're still stuck in the same place. It's the same in the way we think. If we continue to have the same thought patterns, we will continue to experience the same unwanted, repeated experiences. Example of this is, you have that friend who you claim lets you down, but you still hope for them to prove you wrong, while also still holding on to the reminder of their past behaviors. This is creating a conflict in you, and since you've been let down by them in the past, you actually are looking for them to do it again. This is where the ego mind also feels superior when they do, and points out, see, I was right. I told you they'd keep on doing it. See the pattern for what it is telling you. It's not the person doing this to you, because they're just being who they are, integrity and character, and making it clear what their patterns are. The bigger thing is for you to recognize your own patterns of thought and how you respond to them. Whew! Then for you to change how you respond to what you recognize as a pattern in another, and accept these people where they are and not hold those expectations that continue to let you down against them or yourself. Now consider that for a second, because that goes even deeper. So you have that person. You have that person who you feel constantly does this all the time. Now you got to be careful with the thought patterns. Well, they always do that. See, I told you. Because you're holding on to it and you're not allowing them into your space and seeing them as just an individual and not expecting the worst. So if you expect the worst, you're going to get the worst, because you're great at manifesting and you may not even realize it at the time. Well, see, the mind wants to be right and the heart just wants to be happy. If you allow that person to just be as they are, show up as they are, and not hold them with this picture like, I'm expecting this is exactly what always happens. You really have to kind of watch. It's almost like you have to do this cleanse. Or in some cases, you may need to walk away from the individual, but you have to know where you're at, because they're showing up where you're at too. And that's how we attract. Like attracts like. Somebody else will show up into your life and show you where you're at. It'll test you and your attachments and your boundaries, and whether you know to discern, right? Not judge. Discernment is awareness. Judgment is imposing projections, right? You can write that down if somebody remembers to, because I'll probably forget I just said it. Discernment is awareness. Somebody please write that, because I think I want to remember that. Discernment is awareness. Judgment is imposing and projections. Judgment is imposing and projections. If you write that down, I'm sure that's going to help more than myself for saying it. Because whenever I say something, I realize when I hear myself say it again, or like I said, when I'm reading through my journal entries, I'm like, whoa, I said that. I'll have conversations with people and I'll say something and go, did anybody record that? And that's why I started doing live videos, because I realized I couldn't even keep up with the information that was just coming through me. And I can write it, but I couldn't even keep up with my own writing, my own journaling. I was getting to a point where I said, whoa, I've got so many journals, I can't even post them as blogs, because it's so time consuming. And I know how I am. When I would start writing, I just keep going and I'd be stuck at my seat. And I just really enjoy sharing this verbally, because I also like to hear it. Reading it's one thing, but to really hear it, you put it out there. And to me, that's a bigger vibration that extends out so much more powerfully, which is why we really enjoy when you all go live, because that in itself, you really put yourself out there and you create that ripple effect so much more. So did anybody catch that, write that down? Let me see, I remember. It was discernment is awareness, and judgment is imposing, and projections. Imposing and projecting. So, there was apparently a really good video that I watched as well about brainwaves and coupling, which was pretty fascinating. What I gleaned in the short 3-minute video on brain coupling was simply how it has been scientifically proven to show that the brains of two people who connect deeply with one another will actually synchronize to one another. There is no coincidence in this, but to see the science proving how we are all connected brings us closer to accepting our influences through the energy sent via our thoughts. That's fascinating, don't you think? Haven't you ever connected with somebody on a level like you're like, wow, I get you. And I know y'all are doing it in the group. I get you. I feel like we've known each other forever. Right? And yes, I believe in past lives. Truly. I've dreamt about them. I've known about them. I've been aware of them. I can see them playing out even in my current life. And it fascinates me. And my awareness and such that I've known over the years. So if you respond differently to another person, you are sending out a new brainwave to disrupt the repeated thought patterns shared, and also giving a glimmer of something new that sets the domino in motion. So for example, if you have a certain pattern of behavior with an individual that you say always does things a certain way, and you change up the way you respond to them, it's almost like a Jedi mind trick is what I like to say. Because when you respond differently, you kind of throw them off their own kilter. And that opens them up to responding differently. And you set that in motion. If somebody is expecting you to react when you normally react, and you turn around and you don't react, you respond totally different. You're giving them the opportunity to take a step back. Yes, a light bulb moment, Kristen. Wow, oh, well, that was different. They've never done that before. And then they actually, and like I said, the Jedi mind trick. It's like, check you out. You are giving them an opportunity to grow. Like I said, you serve, they serve. You are being served when you serve. At all times, it's synchronistic. You show up at the perfect time, they show up at the perfect time. Doesn't matter if you want to label it good or bad, it's all absolutely perfect. So, what do you think? And funny enough, I had a particular friend on Facebook who was doing live videos, and the next thing I wrote on here was, make sure I contact her to help her with her live videos. An interesting dynamic, right? So yeah, that's beautiful. I love reading these. This is fun. So that was last year. And that particular entry was from, looks like November, 6th? November 5th. No, 6th. I was right. So, what I was talking about last year, I was also doing the microdosing with the shrooms. Actually, I was going to read that entry, wasn't I? Let's go back to that. Let's see if I can find it. So, sweet dreams, Maria. Let's see what we have. Where was it? It was... Here we go. This is from 2000. This is from 2015. That was the one I was in. All right. So it was around this time last year. And I didn't realize it was almost a year ago I started doing this. And I was documenting, like, from day to day, what I was experiencing, and I had day 1, 2, 3, whatever. And on this particular morning, oops. Where is it? I said it was, okay, so on day 5 was a double dose for me. What's the message from my inner child and soul? And sometimes I get a full-on download of like an answer, and sometimes it's just an essence I can feel that feels like so much more, and I can express it. And what I received on this one was go to work. I release all the guilt, shame, and inner anger towards any of the situations or experiences I have had and encountered in my life. I embrace this life. I allow myself to fully feel and radiate love. This is my calling. This is my gift. I feel giddy and excited. And then on day 6, I did a whole small shroom with some of the cap plus the stems of the first one between 7:45 and 9 a.m. when it slowly started to take effect. I even have my little recipe in here. I steeped it in a tea of boiling water, ginger, lemon, cinnamon, ashwagandha, brahmi, and barangari. It's actually barangaraj. With 3 to 4 drops of vanilla stevia and the mushroom immunity, which is a Paul Stamets. The visions I saw were indescribable but sensual. I felt like my tongue was disappearing. They wanted me to give up my tongue. It was like Asian goddesses, like these deities, intertwining tongues. I sensed my inner child, and even my voice turned childlike. I remember that day, too. I realized deep ancestral healing coming through my process, going back to regal times. My dad's side mostly. Dad expressed love the only way he knew, through cooking. I felt reminiscent of what I was when I was 16, living with Dad after Tyler died, and I attempted suicide with an overdose of aspirin from a story Dad shared about a woman he loved had killed herself. At that time, I felt neglected and desperately wanted and needed attention. Dad to show he cared through being engaged and wanting to know me, but I also didn't know how to ask or articulate what it was I needed to him then. That morning, I was picking up small things on the floor. This was the memory, by the way. Dad found me and took me to the ER for CAT scans. That part was blurry, but all I wanted was to feel he cared enough, and showed it. I also sensed a point where I'd felt I carried Lita, my sister, middle sister, on my right shoulder, unable to make things better for her. On my way to the chiropractor appointment that I had that same day, I received a phone call from the accident insurance. Then that made me realize maybe it was a blessing and benefiting me to have had that accident. So at the chiropractor's, I told him how my right side was still bothering me and felt like I still had something heavy on it all the way down. And when he muscle tested me, it went back to when I was around 16 regarding dread in caregiving, and that it seemed to be on point with what I sent earlier with the flashback to when I was 16 and needed to be cared and felt safe and loved. Later, I shared with my dad what I'd been doing, and I had been reflecting on money coming in. The first thing I will definitely do is to have my teeth cleaned and gums treated. And then I had this whole list of things. So that was an interesting, and I had just told you that story, that when I was, that was during that time when I recognized the compassion I had for my dad, and how there was this loss, this feeling he felt we didn't connect because he no longer could connect with me through food. And I understood and had compassion at that moment, realizing that, people want to connect with us, and sometimes they feel like they have to have something. And many of us, it's easy to bring food into the equation because that's what we all do. We all eat, and we have events around food. We commune around food. It's all about gatherings and eating. When in reality, we just need to commune with one another more. We don't need food to do it. We just need to engage, right? Like what we're doing here in this community. Yeah, it sounds like it's about the food, but it really isn't. We're showing food pictures, but we're using that as a catalyst, if you want to say. Because on the surface, we're connecting through food, but as you can see through the introductions and through the videos, everybody's reaching out and sharing a piece of themselves so much more profound and deeper than just what they're eating, right? Or drinking their kombucha. Oh, yeah. Yummy. So, enough of that one. Let's see what else we pull out. Does anybody else have anything they want to share? Well, I'm going to pull out another Hookum out of one of these books that's in front of me on my lap. Is this helping you all? Are you sharing? Are you adding people to the group that you feel could also use a little value in their lives? Thank you, Diana. Maybe Osho's talking tonight. Wow. Oh, this is interesting. What's an interesting title? So this book, The Book of Secrets, I came across, I know there's a bright spotlight on it. So The Book of Secrets, phenomenal book. I came across this back in about 2005 or 6 when I was still living in Italy. I have always had this in, I could collect books. And I don't always read them, obviously, but Hookums, when you just random open it up, profound, and it's always what you need to read, right? Haven't you ever been like, oh, wow, I needed to read that or hear that, right? So you all show up and you go, you get it, everybody's going to get a different message. And that's why it's important to share us, share the playground, share Ridiculously Raw Authentic, invite people because they're going to get what they need in the moment they receive it, just like you do. And it's never going to be the same anyway. Okay, so the title of this chapter, Surrendering in Sex and Surrendering to a Master. I guarantee it's not going to be what it sounds like. That's what the Book of Secrets is all about. It sounds like one thing, and then you start reading and going, oh, wait a minute. So some of the questions in the beginning of this chapter are, and I have to drink some water because my nose is starting to get a little stuffy. So make sure you're hydrating as well. Yeah, so I can feel something's coming through this one. Make sure you're breathing and becoming present in the moment and fully present in your physical body, because that's where you're going to learn. Moment to moment creates the momentum. All right, so the questions in this chapter are, if Tantra teaches to be in the middle, how can one understand the difference between indulgence and repression? Indulgence and repression. Is there any connection between opening up to a master and opening up in sex? So the first question that is posed in this discussion, that basically that's what these are. Last night you discussed the attitude of total acceptance as the basic ground for all tantric sadhana or spiritual practice. If I remember correctly, on another day you said that the science of Tantra teaches to be in the middle in everything, being free from the extremes in life. In this reference, explain how one can come to understand the difference between indulgence and repression in one's sex life. Okay, this is going to be interesting, so you never know how deep this will go because I don't know, I've never read this part. He says, accepting the total life means the middle path. If you deny, you move to the opposite extreme. Denial is extreme. If you deny anything, you deny it for something. It's a trade-off. It's a polarity, right? If one denies sex, he will move to brahmacharya, celibacy, to the other extreme. If you deny brahmacharya, you will move to indulgence, to the other extreme. This is polarity and the pendulum swinging, right? So what we're coming to is, how do you meet it in the center? And this kind of goes, if you listen to my read last week, which was pretty profound as well from this book. Acceptance of totality is to be automatically in the middle. You are neither for something nor against something. You have not chosen. You are just floating in the stream. You are not moving toward a goal. You have no choice. You are in a let go. Tantra believes in a deep let go. When you choose, your ego comes in. Discernment, just saying. When you choose, your will comes in. When you choose, you are moving against the whole universe. You have your own choice. When you choose, you are not choosing the universal flow. You are standing aloof, isolated. You are like an island. You are trying to be yourself against the whole flux of life. Is that getting to any of you like it is for me? I love when I read stuff like this because it's such a profound reminder of how much we choose to be in resistance of being grounded, being centered, and being neutral in the moment. Just being what is. Non-choosing means you are not to decide where life goes. You allow life to move, to take you with it, and you have no fixed goal. If you have a fixed goal, you are bound to choose. Life's goal is your goal. You are not moving against life. You have no ideas of your own against life. You leave yourself, you surrender yourself to the life force itself. This is what Tantra means by total acceptance. Whew. You leave yourself, you surrender yourself to the life force itself. And once you accept life in its totality, things start happening because this total acceptance frees you from your ego point. Your ego point is the problem because of it you create problems. There are no problems in life itself. Existence is problemless. You are the problem and you are the creator of the problem. And you create problems out of everything. Oops, just saying. So he said. I said that, but even if you meet God, you will create problems out of him. Even if you reach paradise, you will create problems out of paradise because you are the original source of the problems. You are not going to surrender. This non-surrendering ego is the source of all problems. Tantra says that it is not a question of achieving something. It is not a question of achieving brahmacharya. If you achieve brahmacharya against sex, your brahmacharya will remain basically sexual. Two extremes, howsoever opposite, are parts of one whole. Two aspects of one thing. If you choose one, you have chosen the other also. The other will be hidden now, repressed. What does repression mean? Choosing one extreme against the other, which is a basic part of it. And you know, I had my own personal realization of this years ago. It's about contrast, because that's what a polarity is. That's what the opposites are. That's what extremes are. And that when you come to the center point, neither exist, but they can't exist without the other. And that's exactly what he's saying. You choose brahmacharya against sex, but what is brahmacharya? It is just the reversal of sex energy. You have chosen brahmacharya, but you have also chosen sex with it. Now brahmacharya will be on the surface, and deep down there will be sex. You will be disturbed because your choice will create the disturbance. You can choose only one pole, but the other pole follows automatically, and you are against the other pole, so now you will be disturbed. Choosing makes it so. Ooh. Tantra says, do not choose, be choiceless. Once you understand this, the question will never arise of what is indulgence and what is oppression or repression. Then there is no repression and no indulgence. The question arises only because you are still choosing. There are people who come to me and they say, we will accept life, but we accept life and then they say, but if we accept life, when will brahmacharya happen? They are ready to be in total acceptance, but the readiness is false, just superficial. Deep down, they are still clinging to the extremes. They want brahmacharya, celibacy. They have not achieved it by fighting with sex. So when they hear me, they think, as we have not been able to achieve it through fighting, now we should achieve it through acceptance. But the achieving mind, the motivational mind, the greedy mind, is there, and the goal is there, the choice is there. If you have something to achieve, you cannot accept the totality. The acceptance is not total. Then you are also trying acceptance as a technique to achieve something. Acceptance means now you leave that achieving mind, that motivated mind that is always for something, hankering for something. You leave it. You allow life to flow freely, just as the wind is flowing through the trees. You allow life to be free, to move freely through you. You have no resistance. Wherever it leads, you are ready to move. You have no goal. If you have any goal, then you will have to resist life. Then you will have to fight it. If a tree has some goal, some leaning, some idea, then it cannot allow the wind to move freely through it. If it wants to go south, then the wind which is forced it north will be the enemy. If you have some goal, you cannot accept life as a friend. Your goal creates the enmity. If you expect something out of life, you are forcing yourself on life. You are not allowing life to happen to you. Right? We have a link for that, darling. I'll provide the link below. It's Osho's Book of Secrets. Let me read that again because that's pretty powerful. If you have some goal, you cannot accept life as a friend. Your goal creates the enmity, the enemy. If you expect something out of life, you are forcing yourself on life. You are not allowing life to happen to you. Tantra says things happen when you do not expect them. Things happen when you do not force them. Things happen when you're not hankering after them. But this is a consequence, not a result. And be clearly aware of the difference between consequence and result. A result is consciously desired. A consequence is a byproduct. For example, if I say to you that if you are playing happiness will be the if you are playing happiness will be the consequence, you will try it for a result. You go and you play and you are waiting for the result of happiness. But I told you it will be the consequence, not the result. Consequence means that if you are really in the play, happiness will happen. If you constantly think about happiness, then it has to be a result. It will never happen. A result is from conscious effort. A consequence is just a byproduct. If you are deep in play, you will be happy. But the very expectation, the conscious longing for happiness, will not allow you to be in deep play. Resistance is futile. The longing for the result will become the barrier and you will not be happy. Happiness is not a result. It is a consequence. If I tell you that you love, you will be happy, happiness will be a consequence, not a result. If you think that because you want to be happy, you must love, nothing will come out of it. The whole thing will be bogus because one cannot love for any result. Love happens. There is no motivation behind it. If there is motivation, it is not love. It may be anything else. If I am motivated and I think that because I long for happiness I will love you, this love will be false. And because it will be false, happiness will not result out of it. It will not come. That is impossible. But if I love you without any motivation, happiness follows like a shadow. Tantra says acceptance will be followed by transformation. But do not make acceptance a technique for transformation. That's profound in itself. Acceptance will be followed by transformation, but do not make acceptance a technique for transformation. It is not. Do not long for transformation. Only then does transformation happen. If you desire it, your very desire is the hindrance. Then there is no question of what indulgence is and what repression is. This question comes to mind only because you are not ready to accept the whole. Accept it, let it be indulgence, and accept it. If you accept it, you will be thrown to the middle. If you accept it, you let it be repression and acceptance. If there is acceptance, you will be thrown to the middle. Through acceptance, you cannot remain with the extreme. Extreme means denial of something. Accepting something and denying something. Extreme means being for something and against something at the same time. The moment you accept whatsoever is the case, you will be thrown to the middle. You will not remain with the extreme. So forget any intellectual understanding of what repression is and what indulgence is. It is nonsense and it will lead you nowhere. Just accept wherever you are. If you are in indulgence, accept it. Why be afraid of it? But there is a problem. If you are in indulgence, you can remain in indulgence only if you are simultaneously trying to transcend it. That gives a good feeling to the ego. You can feel good and you can postpone. You know this is not going to be forever. You feel, today I am indulgent, but tomorrow I will be beyond it. You know that. Today I am drinking alcohol or smoking, but this is not going to be for all my life. I know this is bad and tomorrow I am going to leave it. That hope for tomorrow helps you to indulge today, and that is a good trick. Those who want to indulge, they must have great ideals. Those ideals give you opportunity. Then you need not feel very guilty about whatsoever you are doing, because in the future everything is going to be okay. This is just for the moment. This is the trick of the mind. So those who indulge, they always talk of non-indulgence. Those who indulge, they go to the masters who are against it. And you can see a deep relationship. If you are after riches, money, power, you will always worship someone who is against riches. The ascetic. One who is renounced will be your ideal. A rich society can worship and respect only one who has renounced riches. Look around and you will see. If you are indulging in sex, you must respect a person who has gone beyond it, who has become a brahmachari. You will worship him. He is the ideal. He is your future. You are thinking that someday you are going to be like this man. You worship him. And if one day some rumor comes to you that he is indulging in sex, the respect is gone because you cannot respect yourself. You are so self-condemning of whatsoever you are that if you find that your master is just like you, the respect is gone. Know anyone like that? I know, I've been there. But we're all human and we don't know one another. We really don't. You can't put anybody on a pedestal. He must be just the opposite. Then he gives you hope. Then he can lead you to the opposite end. Then you can follow him. People really do go to extremes. They find somebody they have worshipped or admired has fallen off the wagon, and it happens to where I've witnessed this in other friends of my own, where they felt like that person wronged them because now they found out a lie, but yet they lose sight of the blessings and the teachings or whatever the messages they receive from the individual at the time they needed to receive, as if they're null and void, when in reality is we all serve one another with all this amazing insight and inspiration, right? Again, it's choosing, right? Those extremes. So there is always a very deep relationship between the followers. You will always see them on opposite poles. The follower will will be just on the opposite pole. And he is a follower only because of this. If you are obsessed with food, then you can respect only a person who goes for long fasting. He is the miracle. You hope someday to attain the same. He is your future. You can worship him and respect him. He is the image, but this image helps you to be whatsoever you are. It is not going to change you. The very effort to change, the very idea to change is the hindrance. This is the insight of Tantra. Tantra says, whatsoever you are, accept it. Do not create any ideals. They are dreams and false. Accept whatsoever is. Be present in the moment right here and embrace all of you as whole. Tantra says, whatsoever you are, accept it. Do not create any ideals. They are dreams and false. Accept whatsoever is. Do not call it good or bad. Do not try to justify it or rationalize it. Live in the moment and see that this is the case. Remain with the fact and accept it. This is difficult, very difficult, arduous. Why is it so difficult? Because then your ego is shattered. Then you know that you are a sexual animal. Then the high ideal of brahmacharya cannot help your ego at all. Then you know that you are 99% an animal, and that 1% I leave you just not to shock you too much. I have to admit, some of these so-called, we call them gurus, these people who have left all these teachings, they had the humility to have humor as well, because that's what this life really is, kind of like that cosmic giggle I talked about last week. With the ideals of Mahavira, Buddha, Krishna, Christ, you feel you are 99% divine and only 1% is lacking. So sooner or later, by the grace of God, you will attain it. You feel happy as you are. That will not help. That will not help at all. That can help only to postpone the real problem, the real crises. And unless you face that crisis, you will never be transformed. One has to pass through it. One has to suffer it. But only the facticity of life leads you toward the truth. Fictions will not help. So remain with the fact, whatsoever you are, animal or whatever, is okay. Sex is there, anger is there, greed is there, okay? So it is there. It is so, such is the case. The universe happens to you in this way. You have found yourself in this way. It is how life has made you. It is how life is forcing you, leading you to somewhere. Relax and allow life to lead you. What is the difficulty in relaxing? The difficulty is that you relax, you cannot maintain the ego. Ego can be maintained only in resistance. When you say no, ego is strengthened. When you say yes, ego disappears. Simply. That is why it is so difficult to say yes to anything. Even in ordinary things, it is so difficult to say yes. We want to say no. The ego, the I, feels good only when it is fighting. If you are fighting with someone else, it is good. The ego feels good. If you are fighting with yourself, the ego feels even better. Because to fight with someone else creates more problems around you. When you are fighting with yourself, there is no problem around you. When you are fighting with someone else, the society will create problems for you, victim. When you are fighting with yourself, the whole society will worship you. It is good because you are not harming anyone. And really, if you are someone who is harming yourself, if you are not allowed to harm yourself, you will harm others. Otherwise, where will that energy move? So society is always happy with those idiots who are harming themselves. The society feels good because their violence is directed back. They will not do any harm. That is why we call the sadhus the good ones. They are good ones because they can do no harm. They do harm. Okay, so let me say that again. That is why we call them sadhus, the good ones. They are good ones because they can do much harm. They are doing it, but they are doing it to themselves. They are suicidal. A killer, a murderer, can become suicidal if he turns against himself, so the society feels good, unburdened of a murderer if he becomes suicidal. The society pays respect, appreciates him, but the person remains the same. He remains violent. Now he is violent with himself, or he remains greedy, but he talks of non-greed. But look, try to understand the talk of non-greed. The base is always greed. They say that if you are non-greedy, only then will you achieve paradise. And what is to be gained in paradise? Everything that greed would like. That's humbling. That's a humbling statement, isn't it? So, be non-greedy to achieve paradise. If you are not a celibate, you will not go to heaven. And what are you going to achieve in heaven? All that you condemn here on earth. Then beautiful women are allowed, and there is no comparison, because anyone who is beautiful on earth will become ugly. This is what the Shastra's scriptures say. And the women that are in heaven never become old. They remain fixed at the age of 16. So be celibate here that you can indulge there. But what type of logic is this? The motivation remains the same. The motivation remains exactly the same, only the objects change. The time sequence changes. You are postponing your desires for the future. This is a bargain. Tantra says, try to understand this whole working of the mind, and then it is good not to fight. When it is good to flow as you are and accept it. We are afraid because if we accept, then how will we change? Tantra says acceptance is transcendence. You have tried fighting and you have not changed. Look at your whole life, analyze it, and if you are honest, you will find that you have not changed a single bit, not an inch. Move back towards your childhood, analyze your whole life, and no matter what you may be talking and thinking, the exact actual life has remained the same. And you have been fighting continuously. Nothing happens out of it. So now try Tantra. Tantra says do not fight. No one ever changes with fight, except. Then there is no question of what is indulgence, and what is repression, and what is brahmacharya, and what is this and that. Whatsoever is, you accept it and flow with it. You dissolve your ego resistance. You relax into the existence and go wherever it leads. If the destiny of the existence is that you are meant to be an animal, then, says Tantra, be an animal. What will happen out of it, and how does it happen? Tantra says total transformation happens because once you accept, the inner division dissolves. You become one. Then there are not two of you, the saint and the animal. The saint represses the animal, and the animal throwing the saint aside every moment. Then there is no two in you. You become one. And this oneness gives energy. All your energy is wasted in inner fight and conflict. This acceptance makes you one. Now there is no animal who is to be condemned and no saint who is to be appreciated. You are whatsoever you are. You have accepted it and you have relaxed with it, so your energy becomes one. Then you are a whole and not divided against yourself. This wholeness is an alchemical transformation. With this wholeness you have energy. Now you are not wasting your life. There is no inner conflict. You are at ease within. This energy which you gain through non-conflict becomes your awareness. Energy can move in two dimensions. If it moves in a fight, you're wasting it every day. If it accumulates and there is no fight, a moment comes just like when you go on heating water to 100 degrees. Then the water becomes something else. It evaporates. Then it is no more liquid because it becomes a gas. It will not become transformed at 99 degrees. It will become transformed only at 100 degrees. The same happens inward. You are wasting your energy every day and the evaporating point never comes. It cannot come because energy is not accumulated at all. Once the inner fight is not there, energy goes on accumulating and you feel more and more strong. But not the ego. The ego feels strong only when fighting. When there is no fight, the ego becomes impotent. When you feel strong and that you is a totally different thing. You cannot know about it unless you are whole. Ego exists with fragments, divisions. This you, the self, or what we call the Atma, exists only when there is no division, no inner fight. Atma means whole. Self means the undivided energy. Once this energy is undivided, it goes on accumulating. You are producing it every day. Life energy is produced in you, but you are wasting it in fight. This same energy comes to a point where it becomes awareness. This is automatic. Tantra says this is automatic. Once you know how to be whole, you will become more and more aware, and the day will come when your total energy will be transformed into awareness. When the energy is transformed into awareness, many things happen because then the energy cannot move to sex. When it can move to a higher dimension, it will not move to a lower dimension. Your energy goes on moving to the lower dimension because there is no higher for you. You do not have the level of energy where it can move into the higher, so it moves into sex. It moves into sex and you become afraid of it, so you create the ideal of brahmacharya and you become divided. Then you become less and less energetic. You are wasting energy. This is a very potent experience, that when you are weak, you feel more sexual. It looks absolutely absurd in biological terms, because biology will say that when you are more potent, you will become more sexual. You will feel more sexual. But this is not the case. When you are weak, ill, you will feel more sexual. When you are healthy and a subtle well-being is there, you will not feel so sexual. And the quality of sex will also be different. When you are weak, the sexuality will be a sort of dis-ease, and a vicious circle will be created. Through sex, you will become more weak, and the more weak you become, the more sexual you will feel, and the sex will become cerebral. It will move into your head. When you are healthy, when a well-being is there, when you feel blissed, relaxed, you are not so sexual. Then even if sex happens, it is not a disease. Rather, it is an overflowing, a totally different quality is there. When sex is overflowing, it is just love expressing itself through bioenergy. It is creating a deep sharing, a deep contact through bioenergy. It is a part of love. When you are weak and sex is not overflowing, it is a violence against yourself, and when it is a violence against yourself, it is never love. A weak person can have sex, but his sex is never love. It is more or less a rape. And rape to both the parties, to himself, also it is a rape. But then a vicious cycle has created. The more weak he feels, the more sexual he feels. But why does this happen? Biology has no explanation for it. But Tantra has an explanation. Tantra says that sex is an antidote against death. Sex means life for society. You may die, but life will continue. So whenever you feel weak, feel that death is near, then sex will become more important because you may die at any moment. Your energy layer has gone. You may die at any moment, so indulge in sex so someone can live. Life should go on. For Tantra, old men are more sexual than young men, and this is a very deep insight. Young men are more sexually potent, but not so sexual. Old men are less sexually potent, but more sexual. So if we can enter an old man's mind, then we can know what is happening. As far as sex energy is concerned, it is less in old men, more in young men. But as far as sexuality is concerned, sexuality means thinking about sex. It is more in old men than in young men. Death is coming near, and sex is the antidote to death. So now the weakening energy would like to produce someone. Life must continue. Life is not concerned with you. Life is concerned with itself. This is a vicious cycle. And the same happens in the reverse order also. If you are overflowing with energy, sex becomes less and less important, and love becomes more and more important. And then sex can happen just as a part of love, as a deep sharing. The deepest sharing can be of bioenergy because that is the life force. To whomsoever you love, you want to give something. Giving is a part of love. In love, you give things. The greatest gift can be of your life energy. In love, sex becomes a deep gift of bioenergy, of life. You are giving a part of yourself. Really, in every act of sex, you are giving yourself totally. Then a different circle is created. The more you feel love, the more you become strong. The more you feel love, the more you share love. Then the more strong you become in love, the ego is dissolved. In love, you have to flow with life. You need not flow with life in politics. Rather, you will be a fool if you flow with life in politics. Because there you have to force yourself against life. Only then can you rise in politics. If you are doing business, you will be a fool if you flow with your life. You will be nowhere because you have to fight, you have to compete, you have to be violent. The more violent, the more mad, the more you will succeed there. It is a struggle. Only in love is there no competition, no fight, no violence. You succeed in love only when you surrender. So love is the only anti-worldly thing in the world, the only non-worldly thing in the world. And if you are in love, you will become more a whole, undivided. More energy will be accumulated. The more energy, the less will be the sexuality. And a moment comes when the energy comes to a point when transformation happens and energy becomes awareness. Sex disappears and only a loving kindness, a compassion remains. Buddha has a glow of loving compassion. This is sex energy transformed. But you cannot achieve it through fight because fight creates division and division makes you more sexual. This is the insight of Tantra. Absolutely different from whatsoever you may have been thinking about sex and brahmacharya. Only through Tantra does a real brahmacharya, real purity and innocence happen. But then it is not a result, it is a consequence. It follows total acceptance. Did that touch anyone? For those of you who stayed through all of my reading, I think that's absolutely beautiful. It rings true with what I read last week regarding the difference between sex and sexuality, the difference between the physical action because of the animalistic nature that says I must procreate, that is my animal nature, versus that divine connection between two beings in this love, this embrace, this divine union. Huge difference. And that when you give of yourself, you're intertwined with the other, and the discernment is whether or not it is mutual or one-sided, and what the motives and what is their true bond and love between two individuals if they're going to interact in the engagement of that embrace, because it's not the physical, it's that dissolving and becoming one and that unity. So, I need a drink of water. Little dribble. So I hope you have all enjoyed tonight's journal Hookum. That was a little longer than I anticipated going, but I love you all. I am going to now relax for the evening. It's a pleasant evening, a little warm. I hope you're all breathing and you're present in the moment, and reflect on the differences between discerning and judging. If you remember what I said, I don't. No, discernment is awareness. Judgment is imposing, and it's a projection, okay? Judgment means you're always comparing yourself and projecting yourself upon another person, where discerning is just, discernment should come from an awareness of seeing things and understanding there's a choice, and again, what I just read, choosing is what creates that resistance, that when you choose this or that, you've now created the polarities between two opposites, extremes, polarities, whatever you want to call it, and that you resist one when you choose the other. But if you just remain present in the moment, neutral and allow, which is, it's a Jedi mind trick. It's going, your life changes when you, again, become present with awareness as to how you're showing up and how you react or respond. Are you coming from the heart? Are you coming from the head? Because that's ultimately the overall in all of this. Let's breathe together, everyone. We are not the saint nor the sinner. We just are. When we're looking to the future as if right now we can't embrace that which we say we will be eventually, you either are doing it now or you're not. Step into your personal power. Stop giving your mind excuses to say, well, when I get to that point, I'll do that. But right now, I'm going to do this. Just accept and be where you're at. Stop comparing and projecting yourself in your own life, but just accept where you're at in this moment, right here, right now, and embrace it. And don't put a label on it. Don't judge it, because then that's what's going to create the polarities, the dis-ease, discomfort, that resistance, right? I love you all. Have an amazing evening. Keep it raw, stay rad. Sweet dreams.